Who is Laozi? Laozi was a man born about 2,600 years ago. He lived about 100 years before Confucius, who is another pillar of Chinese culture. Laozi lived during the end of the Zhou dynasty, which is often considered to be the golden age of Chinese civilization. Little is known about Laozi's life, but historians believe he was a keeper of records for the Zhou dynasty. This means he kept track of the people that the emperor met with and wrote notes on what they discussed at the meetings with the emperor. How did Laozi become so well known? As the Zhou dynasty was becoming weaker and weaker, Laozi decided to leave his home of Lui, Henan, and head out west to leave China. Legend has it that he traveled about 500 kilometers on the back of a water buffalo to the western border of the Zhou dynasty. Once he arrived at the border, an official who was in charge of the border crossing stopped him and begged him to write a book for him of all his philosophical knowledge. Laozi then wrote a book that detailed his ideas. His book has 2 sections and a total of 5,000 characters, which is about 4,000 English words. Afterwards, the border official allowed Laozi to pass, and no one ever heard from Laozi again. Historians now believe that Laozi's book, the classic of the virtue of the Tao, known as the Tao Te Ching in Mandarin, was not actually written by Laozi alone at the border, but instead co-authored by Laozi and many people over a long period of time. Regardless of the book's origin, the ideas in the book became a core part of Chinese culture. Many people even think of Laozi as a god because of his philosophical ideas shared in the book. What does the classic of the virtue of the Tao teach? Laozi's book teaches people how to live a good life. Though many people think of Laozi as a god, the book does not teach that the world has a god. Instead, it teaches that a good life can be lived by seeking the way and ignoring earthly distractions. One method of seeking the way is to seek Wu Wei, translated as non-action. Wu Wei is a difficult idea to explain, but most simply it teaches that people will be happy if they learn to connect with nature. Therefore, some Taoist followers of Laozi will practice Wu Wei by sitting in forgetfulness in the midst of nature. To outsiders of Taoism, this is simply known as meditation. Additionally, Wu Wei teaches against rushing all the time and instead encourages stillness and patience. Here are a few translated quotes from the Tao Te Ching that capture Laozi's ideas well. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. The usefulness of a pot comes from its emptiness. What is Laozi's legacy? Confucius's ideas in the Analects were written so that common citizens could follow them. However, Laozi's ideas in the Tao Te Ching were less practical for the common citizen, and therefore were mostly for highly educated people. So Laozi's ideas have greatly influenced China's art, literature, and poetry for the last 2,500 years. Additionally, Taoism is still influencing individuals' lives. 70 million followers around the world study Laozi's way of life. The majority of these followers are in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. In conclusion, Laozi is another figure from Chinese history that has an enormous impact on Chinese culture. To learn more on this topic, I encourage you to study Confucianism and Buddhism, 2 other belief systems that have notable influences on modern Chinese culture.